Be me, 31, work at a nonprofit focusing on workplace equality. Always been the woke one in my family since college, constantly analyzing everything through the lens of systemic oppression. See problems everywhere others don't. Visiting my younger sister Melissa for Thanksgiving. She's 27, married to Kevin for 8 years, 2 adorable kids aged 4 and 6. They live in this gorgeous 2-story house in the suburbs. Kevin works in tech, makes good money. Melissa stays home with the kids, watching them interact, and my feminist alarm bells start going off. Kevin comes home from work. Melissa immediately starts fussing over him. "How was your day, honey? Dinner's almost ready. The kids missed you." She's literally serving him like she's his personal assistant. I can see the power imbalance clear as day. During dinner, Kevin's telling some story about work. Melissa just sits there nodding, asking follow-up questions, completely absorbed in his narrative. Meanwhile, she's cutting up food for the 4-year-old, wiping faces, refilling drinks. Kevin doesn't even notice all the invisible labor she's doing. After dinner, he goes to watch football while she cleans up. "Oh, Kevin works so hard, he needs to unwind," she says when I offer to help. I'm watching this man literally put his feet up while his wife does everything. The next morning, Kevin leaves for work with just a kiss goodbye. Melissa immediately starts this elaborate routine: laundry, cleaning, meal prep. "Don't you ever feel like you're living for everyone else except yourself?" I ask. She laughs it off. "I love taking care of my family." But I can see she's programmed to think this way. Society has convinced her that her value comes from serving others. I start asking pointed questions about her dreams, her ambitions. "Remember how you wanted to be a photographer? What happened to that?" "Oh, maybe someday when the kids are older." Classic patriarchal conditioning, women always putting themselves last. Over the next few months, I start calling her more regularly, sending her articles about emotional labor and unpaid domestic work, sharing stories about women who discovered themselves after leaving traditional marriages. "I just think you deserve to be valued for more than cooking and cleaning." At first she resists, but I'm happy, really. I know she's been conditioned to say that. Women are taught to suppress their own needs, to find fulfillment in sacrifice. I keep gently pointing out the inequalities in her relationship. "When's the last time Kevin supported your interests? Why is his career automatically more important? Do you realize you haven't had a real conversation with another adult all week?" Slowly, she starts opening up about feeling isolated, unfulfilled. "Sometimes I feel invisible," she admits during one of our calls. Exactly what I suspected. She's losing herself in this relationship. I validate her feelings, help her see that what she's experiencing has a name. It's called being trapped in patriarchal marriage structures. I recommend some books about women's autonomy and self-determination. Start talking to her about the concept of economic independence. What if something happened to Kevin? You'd be completely helpless. She's been out of the workforce for 6 years. That's dangerous vulnerability. I frame it as being practical, looking out for her security. Gradually, she starts questioning things she never questioned before. Why don't I have access to the investment accounts? Why am I asking permission to spend money I contribute to earning by managing the household? She starts noticing how Kevin makes unilateral decisions about their social life, how he dominates conversations at dinner parties, how friends always ask him about politics, ask her about the kids. I help her see these patterns aren't coincidental. They're the result of systematic conditioning that keeps women in subordinate roles. During Christmas visit, the dynamic looks even more stark to me now. Kevin's talking about this promotion he might get, making plans to move to a different state for better opportunities. Not once does he ask Melissa what she wants. It's just assumed she'll follow wherever his career leads. "What about what you want?" I ask her later when we're alone. She looks confused, like the question doesn't compute. That's how deeply the programming runs. I start talking to her about women who've discovered their authentic selves after leaving limiting relationships. Not saying she should leave Kevin, just exploring possibilities. What would your life look like if you designed it for yourself instead of around someone else? She gets this dreamy look talking about travel photography, maybe going back to school. Kevin would never support that. It would mean sacrifices for him. And there it is. She can't even imagine pursuing her dreams because it might inconvenience her husband. Classic patriarchal conditioning where women's aspirations come last. Over the spring, I notice her becoming more assertive in small ways. She mentions signing up for a photography class. Kevin apparently wasn't thrilled about the evening schedule. Typical, threatened by her independence. She starts talking about feeling resentful about things she never questioned before, how Kevin gets uninterrupted sleep while she handles all the nighttime kid stuff, how he goes out with friends whenever he wants, but she has to negotiate for a girls' night, how his hobbies get dedicated space in the house while her camera equipment gets shoved in a closet. I validate every observation. Yes, this is what inequality looks like in practice. These aren't isolated incidents, they're part of a systematic pattern. She starts reading feminist theory, joining online support groups for women exploring their identity. I'm proud of her for finally waking up to her own oppression. By summer, she's talking seriously about needing space to figure out who she really is. Maybe we should try separation, just temporarily. Kevin apparently has no idea this is coming. Classic male obliviousness. He thinks everything is fine because his needs are being met. Doesn't even register that his wife is suffocating. The separation happens in August. Melissa moves into a cute little apartment downtown with the kids. Initially, she's energized by the independence. I forgot what it felt like to make my own decisions. She enrolls in community college, starts building a photography portfolio. I'm so proud of her for choosing herself for once. Kevin keeps trying to reconcile, sending flowers, suggesting counseling. Classic male response, trying to fix the symptom instead of addressing the underlying power structure. Melissa holds firm, though. She needs this space to grow. By October, she's filed for divorce. I can't go backwards now that I see how limiting that relationship was. She's glowing with newfound confidence and self-determination. I knew this was the right path for her. The divorce proceedings get messy, though. Kevin fights for joint custody, which means the kids are going back and forth. Melissa has to sell the house, split assets. She moves to an even smaller apartment to afford it on her own. Starts working retail plus freelance photography gigs to pay bills. I keep reassuring her this is temporary growing pains. Building an independent life takes time, but it's worth it for authentic fulfillment. By winter, something shifts in her tone during our calls. She sounds exhausted, stressed about money. I barely see the kids anymore between work and their time at Kevin's. When I try to remind her why she made this choice, she gets snappy. Easy for you to say, you're not living it. I explain this is just the difficult transition period. Breaking free from oppressive structures is never easy. But she seems to be losing sight of the bigger picture. In spring, she tells me Kevin got engaged to some woman he met at work. Apparently the kids really like her. She's young and energetic. Melissa sounds bitter, talking about how quickly he replaced her. I try to reframe it. He needed someone to fill the domestic role she vacated. Proves how interchangeable women are to men in patriarchal relationships. But she's not seeing it that way anymore. Maybe she's just actually nice and fun to be around. Concerning that she's internalizing blame instead of seeing the systemic issues. By summer, Melissa seems completely different person. Exhausted, cynical, stressed about money constantly. The photography thing never took off financially. She's working at a department store and doing wedding photography on weekends. Living in a tiny studio apartment sees her kids only half the time. When I visit in July, I'm shocked at the change. She looks older, tired. The spark is gone from her eyes. The apartment is cramped. No space for her photography equipment. Kids seem confused and sad about the living situation. They keep asking when they can go back to the big house. I try to talk to her about how this is still better than being trapped in an oppressive relationship. She explodes at me. What was so oppressive about having a beautiful home and a husband who loved me? I'm taken aback by her hostility. Try to remind her how unfulfilled she was, how limited. I had everything I needed. I was happy. She's clearly romanticizing the past because the present is difficult. I explain this is normal when breaking free from comfortable oppression. She tells me to stop analyzing her life through my feminist bullshit, concerning that she's rejecting the framework that helped her see the truth. She starts listing things about Kevin that she misses. How he always remembered her coffee order, surprised her with little gifts, how secure she felt financially, how nice their friend group was, how the kids were happier when they all lived together. I point out she's focusing on superficial comforts instead of genuine equality. She stares at me with this look I've never seen before. Do you even hear yourself? You destroyed my life because it didn't fit your ideology. Now she's just lashing out because change is hard. I try to stay calm, explain that no one forced her to make these choices. She discovered her own oppression and chose liberation. You manipulated me. You convinced me I was unhappy when I wasn't. This is revisionist history. She came to these realizations herself. I just helped her see what was already there. Kevin never controlled me. I had choices. I just chose differently than you would have. She's completely lost sight of how conditioned she was, forgetting how she talked about feeling invisible and unfulfilled. Our conversation escalates until she's screaming. I had a good husband, beautiful kids, financial security, a lovely home. Now I'm alone, broke, exhausted, and my children are confused and sad. You made me throw away everything good in my life for your political agenda. She kicks me out, says she never wants to see me again. Clearly, she's having some kind of breakdown from the stress. I try calling over the next few weeks, but she's blocked my number. Send emails explaining that what she's feeling is normal. The patriarchal conditioning runs deep. Of course, there's backlash when you break free. She needs to remember why she made these choices. Get a message from her lawyer telling me to cease all contact. Learn through family that she's completely cut me off. Won't let me see the kids. Won't speak to anyone who talks to me. Apparently, she's telling people I brainwashed her. My mom says Melissa seems broken in a way she's never seen. That I need to fix this somehow. But you can't force someone to stay woke if they choose to go back to sleep. Sometimes the comfort of oppression feels easier than the difficulty of liberation. Months pass with no contact. Hear through relatives that she's struggling financially, working 2 jobs, barely keeping up with rent. Kids are having behavioral issues, acting out at school. Kevin and his new fiancée apparently stepped in to help more with childcare. Melissa seems increasingly isolated, lost most of her friends in the divorce. The photography dreams never materialized into sustainable income. She's apparently gained weight, looks tired all the time. Some family members start making comments about how I ruined her life, which is ridiculous. She made her own choices. I just helped her see options she couldn't see before. Sometimes liberation looks messy in the short term. Try reaching out through mutual friends, but she refuses any contact. Sends word that I'm dead to her and she never wants to see me again. Apparently, she blames me for destroying her family, which shows she still doesn't understand the systemic issues that were always present. By Christmas, I'm feeling genuinely worried about her. Here she's been struggling with depression, can barely afford therapy. The apartment is apparently depressing. Kids complain about being cramped. They prefer staying at Kevin's bigger house with his fiancée. Melissa sees this as another betrayal instead of natural consequence of her housing situation. Start wondering if maybe I pushed too hard too fast. Maybe some people aren't ready for full liberation. Maybe I should have been more gradual in helping her see the truth. But then I remember how clearly she articulated her unhappiness, how excited she was about discovering her authentic self. She chose this path. I just illuminated it. It's not my fault she can't handle the temporary difficulties. Though watching from afar as her life falls apart is harder than I expected. She seems genuinely miserable in a way she never was before. The kids seem less happy, more anxious. Kevin appears to have moved on easily while she's struggling. Sometimes I wonder if I misread the situation. Maybe their marriage dynamic wasn't as oppressive as I thought. Maybe she was actually content in ways I couldn't recognize. But that's impossible. Oppression is oppression, even if people don't see it. Just because someone doesn't recognize their cage doesn't mean they're free. Still, seeing the concrete consequences of her choices is unsettling. She went from comfortable stability to struggling paycheck to paycheck, from being surrounded by family to being completely alone, from confident homemaker to exhausted single mother. Her whole friend group apparently sided with Kevin, or just drifted away. She has no support system left except professional services she can't afford. The photography career never developed past weekend wedding gigs. She's working retail management and freelance work just to cover basic expenses, living in 600 square feet with 2 growing children. Meanwhile, Kevin's living in their old house with someone new. Kids get to keep their rooms, their school, their neighborhood friends. From their perspective, Mom left and disrupted everything, while Dad provided stability and continuity, even though Melissa was trying to model independence and self-determination. The optics are that she chose ideology over family. Last I heard through family, she's completely given up on photography, sold all her equipment to cover emergency dental work, working overtime at both jobs just to keep the apartment. Kids are in after-school care because she can't pick them up. She looks older, harder, like the joy has been drained out of her. Apparently, she tells people she was manipulated into destroying her life, that she had everything and threw it away for nothing, which is a fundamental misunderstanding of what liberation looks like. But seeing her actual lived reality now, I have to admit it's complicated. She traded security and comfort for independence and struggle, traded a loving, if imperfect, partnership for complete solitude, traded financial stability for economic vulnerability, traded a supportive community for ideological purity. And she seems objectively less happy in every measurable way. Part of me wonders if I imposed my values on her situation, saw oppression where she saw partnership, saw limitation where she saw specialization, saw inequality where she saw complementarity. But that would mean questioning everything I believe about patriarchal structures, about women's need for independence and self-determination, about the importance of economic equality in relationships. Maybe some women genuinely thrive in traditional arrangements. Maybe happiness and fulfillment look different for different people. Maybe I was so focused on theoretical liberation that I ignored practical reality. Watching my sister's life disintegrate has shaken my confidence. Everything I told her was based on sound feminist principles, but the outcome has been objective misery for everyone involved. Her, the kids, even Kevin, who lost his family. Sometimes I wonder if being right theoretically matters if it leads to human suffering, if the cure is worse than the disease. But then I remember that social change is never easy, that breaking free from oppressive systems always involves short-term pain, that you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Still, those eggs are my sister's actual life, her children's stability and happiness, relationships and security vow that took years to build, destroyed in months based on my analysis of her situation, analysis that seemed so clear and obvious at the time. But looking at the wreckage now, I have to ask, what if I was wrong? What if their marriage was actually working for them? What if my sister was genuinely happy before I intervened? What if the oppression I saw was actually just different life choices? What if Kevin really was a loving husband and I convinced her to throw that away, sitting alone in my apartment thinking about my sister alone in hers? Both of us isolated now because of choices I encouraged, wondering if my ideology made me blind to what actually mattered, wondering if I destroyed something beautiful because it didn't match my theory, wondering if my sister was right to cut me out of her life forever, wondering if I really am responsible for ruining everything she held dear, and not having good answers to any of these questions, just sitting with the weight of consequences I never fully considered, and the growing suspicion that maybe I was the problem all along.